Hello and welcome to the Co-op for Two channel. It's June 2nd, 2024 at 1 p.m. Sunday afternoon. It's time for our mail-based game. And we are continuing our playthrough of the Bewildered Blacksmith. You can see I've started a new system for organizing our letters. Let's do a little bookkeeping and then we'll get started. Let me check in with the chat. YouTube says 8 concurrent viewers, 1 like, so we've got a small group today. We'll do a very brief recap of the case and then we'll get into this latest letter, but let me take care of a couple of things first. The past 2 nights, Friday and Saturday night, we've been playing a game called, a case called Welcome to Action. Why am I blanking on it? It's a game by a company called Be the Detective. And why am I blanking on the name now? Someone remind me what we're playing. Well, it's been a rough experience, actually. The previous game by this company called The Duel, I loved. And this one is Adventure Park. Welcome to Adventure Park. It's a cold case game, and we spent 5 hours yesterday really struggling with basically one document and then getting to the end and getting it wrong and just flailing around. I was getting stuck on the name because there is a real theme park called Adventure Park, called Action Park. Which is quite famous. There's a Netflix documentary about it. And so there's plenty of interesting theories about when you get tongue-tied, is there a competition going on for a nearby word? And that's what's happened here. Okay. Anyway. So we have one more episode of that to play. And at the end of last night, we were talking about when should I schedule that for? And the channel was sort of split whether we should play that after today's session of Dear Holmes this afternoon or play it in the evening. And after thinking on it, I've decided that it's better to keep the same regular time for continuations of games. That makes the most sense to me. So we've been playing that at 10 p.m. in the evening, so we're going to continue playing that at 10 p.m. in the evening. But I am absolutely open to the idea of doing more live streams on weekend during the daytime, but not today. Okay, anything else to talk about? Yes, there is one more thing to talk about. I want to share with you a new project that a viewer is working on. Let me see if I can bring that up here. Okay. So Lawrence, who's created this project, this website, deductionclub.com, stopped by the Discord yesterday or day before yesterday to tell about a new project he's in the middle of working on. So this is not a finished project. It's a play-by-mail game, though, intended to be a series of games, but he's got up the first letter of this case. You can see it's a beautiful website, and it's a new play-by-mail game that Lawrence is working on. You can download the first letter, or you can read it. It's a 17-page first letter. Now, I'm not sure why Lawrence wouldn't want to break that up, but the idea of a 17-page starting letter to a case, I love. The longer, the better, in my opinion. And we can take a look at it. Let's see. There's the PDF here. I mean, don't want to spoil it, but you can see it's brand new and a little introduction to how the case is working, and he's got his email there. There is a sign up on the website if you want to get updates. I have signed up. I'm very interested in this game. There is a real dearth of play-by-mail games, and they are very special experiences, and I am putting my toe in the water here. We've worked on this game High and Low, which you see behind me, which is a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style game. But I've already said that we're going to go into creating play-by-mail cases for it. And I've been working on a back-end web services that will be able to help doing it. So I'm very interested in this format. There needs to be more. It's a very special experience playing these sort of forced delayed games, slow play games, and I'm very interested in it. And you can see here's the sample letter. You can see 5 out of 17 pages, so I guess 12 pages or so, but you can see it's quite long. You can read this first letter yourself and play along with it. But while you consider, I mean, I absolutely recommend you sign up to get updates. I will keep you updated on the project. But, no, there's the newsletter you can sign up to. But the other thing is, Lawrence seems amenable to having us play it on the channel when it's ready. He's doing it in his spare time, so he doesn't know when he's going to finish. We won't start playing it until it's all finished. So it may be quite a while. So you have a choice to make. You can either read the first letter just to get a flavor for it or start reading it. I think Lawrence is open to feedback. If you want to get more involved in the project, maybe contact Lawrence, see if he wants suggestions. But I do hope we will play it on the channel when it becomes available. In the meantime, we've got a latest case from Dear Holmes that we'll play after this one in 2 weeks. And then I hopefully have found someone who has some older copies of Dear Holmes to keep us stocked up with our Sunday mail-based games. The other thing that I want to remind you about when Lawrence came into the channel to tell us about his project is there was something very special we did on this channel by a viewer, Matt C., who wrote us a bespoke custom Sherlock Holmes play-by-mail case, which we played over the case of 5 weeks or so, and we submitted what we wanted to do, and Matt wrote the case, this long, detailed case, as we were playing it. It was a one-of-a-kind thing. Those of you who joined me for it were experienced something really quite special. But you can still watch those playthroughs if you're interested in creating that kind of game, that might be a nice place to start. And other people in the channel, Rob in particular, helped make some mock-up documents and some editing by other people. It really looked good. Very special. And if anyone wants to try making another similar case like that, reach out to me on Discord or via email or at the Board Game Geek Guild for this channel. You'll find links to all of those on the YouTube page. And lastly, thank you to all the people who have joined the Patreon to support this channel. As you know, we purchase all the games we play here ourselves. Okay, let us get into today's session. You can see I've created a little folder. I thought we'd try something different. I'm trying to avoid writing on the letters as I have previously. But now now I've put them in little page protectors. It looks like that the page protectors are not making it harder to read. So I think we're going to be okay here. And then this also lets me mark up on top of the page protectors if there are sections we want to underline or note. So, and I can see Lawrence is in the chat with us today. All right. Now, let's get into our very quick recap. First case, this strange boy stumbles onto the blacksmith property, falls asleep in the forge. They welcome him in. They put him in their house. They love him like a son. He's in good health, although he's very dirty. Came in barefoot. And it turns out he's deaf. Not mute, but he's not I guess not mute, wasn't specified. But he's not saying anything about where he came from. He's scared of visitors, and especially people dressed in business attire. They don't know where he's from. No one in town knows where he's from. He doesn't seem to be escaped from a child home. And then all of a sudden he disappears one morning. And he's walked out. And one of the things that was our key observation, hopefully not a bug in the game, was could someone have come and picked him up? How would they have roused him if he's deaf? If he's sleeping in the kitchen, how do you wake him up? He left by opening the door, so he left of his own volition. So what does that mean? Does that mean he wandered off on his own? Is he a sleepwalker? Is that what's happened here? Or did someone come to collect him and found some other way to wake him up? And then even if they did, why would he leave with them if he's running on an escape? And the other odd thing is that there are tracks in the recently poured gravel driveway of a thin carriage. And have I underlined that part? The width of the tire tracks were very narrow, quite unlike those of the normal carts. In our second letter, we got a little bit of follow-up, including this very weird interaction with the wife of the town vicar. She says to our guy's wife, I guess, no, to our guy who's writing us, David Golding, the blacksmith. She says, you know, your kid is not the first strange kid that showed up. And he doesn't like that she's calling her strange, but he asks her to tell her what she's talking about. And she says she was in the forest, Mrs. Hamer, and a little brunette-haired girl, I think she said she was 5 years old. 5 years old, she notices her. Now, notice that this girl doesn't talk, so I wonder, is this girl also mute? But she sees this little 5-year-old girl who the forest kind of shushes away. And the vicar's wife wonders what the hell this woman's doing with the 5-year-old daughter, because the woman claims, the florist claims that she's the daughter of the sister. And then when this woman eventually goes talking to some people who are familiar with the Flores family, they say she doesn't have a sister. She just has, there were just the two siblings, the boy and the girl, sister and brother, and tells us a little bit about the florist being this, coming from this family of outcasts and stuff, heavy drinkers and stuff. And when our guy says, well, maybe she just took in an orphan and didn't want to say anything about it. And this woman says, this vicar's wife says, that's insane because this woman doesn't have a single nurturing instinct or caring bone in her body. So what is she doing with this child? That's the question. That's not her own. Also, this brown-haired child. So is there a broader conspiracy of kids? Is the boy part of this group of kids? Are there two kids? Is the florist the key piece of this puzzle? And then there's a little bit of follow-up about this carpenter ordering nails from our blacksmith. It's a very strange situation where our blacksmith spends a lot of time in the beginning of our case telling us how he's getting some great new orders, constant flow of new orders from the carpenter of nails because people are dying and he needs coffins, and he's finding it hard to keep up with the demand, and he's ordering all these nails from the blacksmith. And this wife continues and says, my husband, the vicar, hasn't performed a funeral in a year, and there is no increase of deaths. I don't know why this guy says, I don't know why this carpenter is asking for so many nails. Very confusing. We come up with a possible explanation. Maybe it's just that the vicar in this town doesn't have increased deaths, but in the other town over they do. And then the big news is our blacksmith gets a note hand-delivered to the door, addressed to Mr. Golding. The sheet of paper, which has got cut out letters from a newspaper as if it's a kidnapping note, but it says, forget the boy, he is safe. If you persist, it will be bad for you. No punctuation. So someone doesn't like him asking around about the boy. It's someone local. It's cut from a local newspaper. He says, although there's some mixed comfort in hearing the boy is likely to be safe, they're deeply troubled by this threat. And then he walks his property and he sees, hey, there's the tracks from this mystery cart again. And it looks like it's the person who delivered the note. So the same cart that picked up this kid to take him away secretly has now taken a huge risk in coming to his property again to deliver this note. And again, noting these thin wheeled tracks of this cart, like not a regular horse-driven large cart, not a cab, anything like that. It says, I'm now convinced the owner of that carriage and the person who has taken Edward are one and the same. So that's where we leave things, but let's talk a little bit about some theories. So we've got the weird thing about how this kid was roused and woken up. He's in good health, which suggests he's got medical care. He's just all dirty, as if he's been working on a forge. And I think perhaps our best theory currently might be that these are sort of orphaned kids that might be being used in a mine or something. And I guess the points in favor of that are this kid is super dirty, like maybe he's being used for child labor in a mine. Maybe they would want deaf kids to be able to deal with the explosions of the mine. And then I think the thing that's really drawing the mine theorists is the idea that that's what all the nails are used for. That they're building infrastructure underground for the mine. I don't know how you have a secret mine operation, though. That's strange. The other thing that I find problematic about the mine theory is you could absolutely see using a 10-year-old boy as child labor in the mines. But a 5-year-old girl seems much less likely to be useful working the mines. Now, I had another theory, which was that this other little 5-year-old brunette that we see in the florist shop, my theory is, what if this family, the florist family, which were sort of outcasts living in the backwoods in the farm, what if the boy and the girl, the 10-year-old boy and the 5-year-old girl, are in fact the children of the florist that are not just illegitimate, but maybe children with the brother. So in other words, my theory is that this outcast family, the Hamers, are basically children that are not reported to the authorities because they're from their incestuous children, and that's why the family was run out of town, and that's why they're being hidden. That's why no one knows about them. And this woman who doesn't have a caring bone in her body, that's why they're all disheveled and not in good shape. And that the cartwheels are like flower cartwheels. But there's both the theories of the mine and the children of the forest both suffer in not explaining who came and collected this kid if he was deaf. Although maybe he's deaf, but, he happened to be awake. That could be a complete red herring. He could have been awake when someone came to get him. It also doesn't really, neither of those theories explains how you get a kid with good teeth and bones who looked like he was in medical care. I think the best explanation for those is the runaway theory, that he's run away from child home. So I don't think we have a great theory that is all that takes care of all of our issues. Noted the tracks, but no hoof prints. Would a wheelchair be used out on the road? I don't see how you could travel very far in a wheelchair. Maybe the boy wasn't deaf to begin with, but gone deaf because of the explosions. Interesting. Marco says you could use the little girl in the mine shafts to get into tight places. Maybe. Bicycle. I thought a little bit of a bicycle too, but clearly this guy is mentioning it as if it was a cart. So if he just saw one line, surely he would say something about that. Anna says real child labor was real. They even used 6-year-olds because they were small and could move in the narrow tunnels and pull the little carts. Okay. So it sounds like maybe the audience is happiest with the mine digging. Maybe especially if it's some informal mine operation. Okay, let us open our next letter then. Okay, so this is not a letter from the Blacksmith today. We've got a letter from Frederick Tricker, the manager of the Swan Hotel at Loddon, a nearby bigger town. Dear Holmes, I trust you are well. I've already been very busy since arriving in Norfolk, but have made some very good progress, as I will attempt to outline. The journey to Loddon was not straightforward. Having spent some time scrutinizing my Bradshaw's guide, I opted to travel on the Great Eastern Line to Tivitshall, where I then caught a small train on the Waveney Valley Line in order to reach a place called Geldeston. A hired dog cart swerved to carry me the remaining 5 or 6 miles before finally reaching the Swan Hotel, a little after 11 o'clock this morning. I had but a few minutes to deposit my bags in the small suite of rooms that I took before heading out in the dog cart once more. A short while later, I was set down at the top of the drive leading to Goulding's forge. So this is someone that we've asked to visit Goulding. I guess Mr. and Mrs. Goulding could not have been more welcoming. He is a little over 6 feet in height, with short graying hair, a lean figure, and something of a stoop. His good wife is a foot shorter, very much grayer, and sturdily built. Learning I had set off from London. Oh, London, not... No, London. Okay. I had set off from London at some unearthly hour. She insisted that I partake of an early luncheon. So while Mr. Goulding gave me a quick tour of the forge, his wife prepared the culinary tour. A plate stacked with an abundance of rural produce, cold pheasant, pickled onions, a slice of game pie, some thickly cut brown bread, and a sizable wedge of cheddar cheese. A tall glass of homemade cider completed the meal. While I ate, Mr. Goulding took me through the events of the previous day, his encounter with Mrs. Roper and the threatening note his wife found at the door. He explained that he had written to you with the same information. Fully appraised and unable to eat any more of Mrs. Goulding's fine food, I thanked them for their hospitality and announced that I would need to head back into Loddon to begin my inquiries. They seemed reassured that I was taking such an approach. It was only a short walk back into Loddon, and I made the hotel my first port of call. It was as well that I did, for the reception desk had taken receipt of the telegrams you had sent to me only an hour before. I was therefore able to follow up on some of the leads you suggested. So this is a day or so. It's only been a couple days. Okay, the leads that Holmes has suggested to this guy, he wants him to follow up. The Loddon Police Station. I first spoke to P.C. Melrose. He confirmed that no further progress has been made in the search for the missing boy. The officer seemed competent and obliging and appeared to be sincere. I have no reason to believe he was keeping anything from me. Regarding James Hoddy, I visited his business premises on George Lane. He operates from a large yard, which is really a ramshackle collection of outbuildings and smaller two-up, two-down cottage, and a small two-up, two-down cottage. Can someone clarify what they think it means, a two-up, two-down cottage? Maybe 2 apartments on the upper, 2 apartments on the bottom. That serves as the office for his funeral business. To the right of the entrance is a good-sized coach house and stable block. But it appears that most of the other buildings are used for woodworking. I could see one open shed containing seasoned planks and timber, and another housing some completed wooden packing crates. No sign of a mine, but is he building boxes? Straight away, I was able to answer one of your questions. The street map of Loddon, which you say you were able to scrutinize back in Baker Street, was not misleading. The George Lane yard sits directly behind the florists on the high street. In fact, I could see immediately that the two were originally one large plot, as there were no boundary walls or fences between them. The path leading to the main cottage continues beyond the building to the back entrance of a much larger structure. I'd only just entered Hoddy's yard when I was confronted by the man who emerged from the shed containing the packing crates. He was dressed in a long black frock coat, tall hat, and pressed gray trousers. That's the description that the kid was scared of, which I imagine to be his funeral director's attire. He eyed me with some suspicion, greeted me pleasantly enough. In the background, I could hear the faint sound of woodworking, at least one handsaw being used, and a knocking from elsewhere. The sounds were strangely muffled and seemed to be coming from deep inside the building. This is the mine theory starting to look pretty good. They've got a building covering a mine. He hears the knocking, but it's muffled. I think we're starting to see this picture. This theory is looking better and better. I explained I had traveled up, but also the forest is involved somehow. I explained that I had traveled up from London to visit my elderly mother, who resided in the nearby village of Hales. I said that while it was very distressing to me, I believed she had but weeks to live, and I had been forced to consider what funeral arrangements might be required. Hottie's demeanor changed visibly in learning I was a potential customer. I was shepherded into the office, and the man began to outline the burial options and choices of coffin available to me. He seemed a little vexed to learn I was extremely thrifty, and my mother had always insisted on having an inexpensive funeral. On hearing this, he pointed me in the direction of a roughly made casket, the cheapest coffin he sold. Looking at it, I had no doubt that the iron nails used in its construction had been produced at Golding's Forge. Okay, so he is using nails for that, among possibly other things. Before leaving him, I asked if he could write down for me the principal details we had discussed and the costs of such a funeral plan. The tall Scot was only too pleased to do so. I've kept the small sheet of paper he used in case it proves to be relevant later. Now the florist shop. Okay, here we go. From Hottie's yard, I walked back down George Lane, turned right onto High Street. Bethany Hamer's shop is a substantial building, 2 large bay-fronted windows, and an eye-catching array of plants and flowers. On first entering the premises, I detected an unusual and somewhat unpleasant odor. The florist herself was polite but aloof. A little over 5 feet 8 inches in height, with sandy-colored hair and a world-weary demeanor. Her features would not likely be described as pretty, but there is something striking about her clear blue eyes. So I think that's something we should use. I don't think there's any mention of the boy having super clear blue eyes, but we should go back and check. That will help us identify whether he is in fact related to her. Does anyone remember? We'll deal with that later. Okay. For convenience, I stuck to the same story about my ailing mother. I made general inquiries about the types of flowers required for a small family funeral and the likely cost of them. It was quite clear to me that Miss Hamer is something of a perfectionist. She apparently uses only the very best cut flowers for such occasions, the supply of which comes from a weekly delivery of blooms sent up from Covent Garden in London. When I expressed some surprise at this, she coyly revealed her secret. Miss Hamer has a brother in London who attends the flower market on her behalf and buys all of the flowers she requests. These are packed into wooden crates for the rail journey to Geldeston, where they are then collected by cart. Florist's cart, perhaps. Okay, so that's mention of her brother. Now we know what he does. During my time there, I did not see or hear anything of the auburn-haired girl that Mrs. Roper claimed to have seen. And when I asked, as casually as I could, whether Miss Hamer had any assistance in the shop, she replied most definitively, no. I run the business alone, for I have no husband or children to assist me. Before leaving, I asked Miss Hamer for a list of suitable flowers and their respective prices, which she happily provided. After this, I returned to the hotel and continued my inquiries. While enjoying a light evening meal and a splendid bottle of Beaujolais in the restaurant, I was able to glean some information from one of the waitresses as well. Persisting with the ruse about my ailing mother, I mentioned that I had visited Mr. Hottie and Miss Hamer that afternoon and was minded to use their services. I then asked if she knew anything of their reliability and reputation. She smiled warmly and replied, "You'll have no trouble with either, as both are very professional." She then moved a little closer and lowered her voice. "They do say that Mr. Hottie has become quite sweet on Miss Hamer. He originally rented his yard from her, but 6 months ago they struck some sort of deal. He provides the wooden crates for her flower deliveries and takes the empty crates to the railway station on Thursday night, together with an envelope containing her order for that week. The full boxes are then returned the next day, and Hottie picks them up from Gildeston in his heavy cart. The arrangement suits them both. He pays no rent, and she gets free deliveries. Everyone believes that Miss Hamer has bewitched our Mr. Hottie." "So she's not a popular woman, then?" I could not help but ask. "No," came the reply. "She's something of a recluse, and has a wicked tongue. But, to be fair, her flowers are the best for miles around, and her shop has truly brought some life to the high street." She explained that the forest shop had once been a chemist's, with a full laboratory in the cellar, which made it a particularly welcome addition to the area. "I suppose that's why her business done so well," she added, "and I've heard she can be very supportive of grieving mothers, in particular spending time with them and taking great pains to help them choose the most appropriate flowers for their funeral service." We talked for a short while longer before I thanked her for the meal and the invaluable information. When I left the restaurant, I realized it was still relatively early, and being a Thursday, Hottie would be making the journey to Geldeston in his cart. For the sake of completeness, I was keen to verify what Miss Hamer and the waitress had told me about these weekly trips, and hoped to confirm that the envelope and wooden crates were indeed being transported to the London address of Miss Hamer's brother. I had in mind to visit the carpenter once again and explain that I had been told of his regular trip. As part of my ruse, I then planned to ask if it might be possible for me to accompany him, pretending that I had left one of my traveling cases at the station and was keen to retrieve it. I set off towards George Lane, and as I approached Hottie's premises, could see a large tumbril cart sat in the entrance, headed by a powerful-looking Shire horse. In the back were a dozen or more wooden packing crates, some with holes drilled in the sides. Once again, the nails used in their construction looked familiar. The yard was well built, but I could see no sign of Hottie. Confident that my subterfuge would work, I strolled up to the cart and began to gently pat the horse. As I did so, I could see that two of the crates had distinct address labels attached to them, which read T. Hamer, 96 Worship Street, Shoreditch, London. Realizing that I no longer needed to uphold the charade, I began to edge backwards towards the entrance, listening attentively and watching for any sign of the carpenter. Despite my haste, I was also able to see that the door to the coach house was partly open. Inside was an ornate black hearse and stabling for two further horses, clearly the stock of Hottie's trade. Back at the hotel now, I decided to pen these lines to you rather than wait until the morning. I'm hoping that the hotel can organize for the post to be carried on tomorrow's milk train to London. If you receive my report by lunchtime, you should be able to dispatch a telegram with any further instructions before the day's end. In the meantime, I remain your ever loyal companion, Watson. P.S. The threatening note may be worth examining. There appears to be a light thumbprint in one corner, and a faint aroma I cannot quite place. You should be able to determine more. Wow, that is a very interesting letter. I would say our mystery is still alive and well, but we got some clues here. So the florist, where the 5-year-old girl has been spotted, is connected with the carpenter's lumber yard. They're right next door. They're hanging out. They've reached some sort of deal. The point that he's hearing these muffled sounds really lends weight to the mining operation idea. There's plenty of horses, shed with wooden packing crates. He meets the lumberyard carpenter who's dressed just the way that the boy was scared of. So I do think we're connecting the boy now to Hadi as his captor or his taskmaster. So that's good to connect that. He's definitely involved in the funeral business. He's got horses that look like they're for carrying hearses. The florist is getting her flowers delivered from London. The carpenter is helping her transport them back, the crates back and forth. Possibly that's the explanation for all the nails. Is it that you use the nails to assemble a crate, you ship it, the nails get knocked off to open the crate, and then you need them again to pack it, to reassemble it? So that's why you're going through so many nails. We've got this note of an unpleasant odor at the florist shop. Presumably not the odor of flowers, but what is it the odor of? Is it the odor of TNT, gunpowder from explosions down in the mine that the kids are dragging in? She seems to be running a good flower shop. She does seem to be getting the flowers delivered to her from London, from her brother. But then it's a little confusing how what's going back and forth. There's holes in the flowers, maybe to let the holes in the carts, but maybe to let the flowers breathe. They go in every week. Boy, that's a lot of business you're doing. So he gives her the crates. Apparently, they're driving the empty crates to the railway, bringing them back to London, and then sending them back up full the next day with flowers from the brother. But there's holes in the carts. Is there something else traveling to London in these carts? Are they really going back empty? Then there's this very weird thing about how the florist shop used to be chemist with a full laboratory in the cellar. And then she says, I suppose that's why her business does so well. I've heard she can be supportive of grieving mothers in particular. What does that mean? Is she running abortions and keeping the babies? Well, I don't really understand this part here. The florist once was a chemist with a full laboratory. I suppose that's why her business does so well. I don't understand that. Why does this have to do with her business doing well? Supportive of grieving mothers? I don't get it. Let's see if the chat has a better idea. Let's look. We got a whole bunch of comments here. Wheelbarrows have only one wheel, could justify the bicycle. Does the small house with 2 rooms on the ground, type of small house with 2 rooms on the ground floor and two bedrooms upstairs? Are they smuggling something? Breathing holes? Are they smuggling children? Everyone thinks that's right, but could it just be holes for the flowers to breathe? Melissa says, could there be something with these grieving families? Like maybe they've convinced them their kids are dead, but they're actually taking the kids? I mean, you can't get new kids every week. So that can't be the transport thing. Drug them up to stay put in the box. It would make more sense that the kids are coming from London, from an orphanage in London. Rob says what I was thinking. That'd be a lot of missing kids if they ship out loads of crates every week. Drugging the kids to make them look like they died and stealing them. Anna says, yeah, the florist who's very attentive to grieving mothers seems very suspicious. Also, the chemist lab is hers, giving the kids some potion to look dead, taking the children to smuggle them. Maybe the children soil themselves in the crates and that's the odor. That doesn't feel right to me. Joji says, maybe they get street kids from London to use in the mine. That seems a little more likely to me. Rob says it's the odor of decomposing bodies. I see. An interesting theory. Joji says, but the boy was said to be well fed or could have been well fed until recently. So what about this as a theory that here's a pretty dark theory, but it's along what Rob was saying. What if the carpenter and the florist have arranged to dig out the mine? There's a mine underground where they can dig some stuff. And to do that, they need child labor. So they're bringing in kids from London, from orphanages, maybe lying to them about something, putting them in the railway crates, shipping them out to work in the mines, and then they inevitably end up dying. And then the florist is charged with burying them in her cellar, basically, when they die. And so the smell is the smell of the decomposing bodies. But then why is the little Auburn girl running around in the florist shop? Marco says the crates with flowers are empty from Laden, and then they return full of children drugged with the lady chemist potion. Anna says, you're right, smuggling kids from London makes more sense, but what's with the odor and being attentive to mothers? And that's a good question. I don't really understand. DJ Moneycut says, mining is legal. Why the secrecy? Child labor is legal as well. That's a good point. Although it's, yeah. We've got two smells, don't forget. An unusual smell in the lumberyard and an unusual, unpleasant smell in the forest. And not clear if they're the same smell. And could you really pack a 10-year-old boy in a crate? I guess if you drug him. Does anyone understand this part? She explained the florist shop had once been a chemist with full laboratory, which made it a welcome addition to the area. That's fine. And then she says, then she says, I suppose that's why her business does so well, she added. And I've heard she can be supportive of grieving mothers. So the line I don't understand is, I suppose that's why her business does so well. It had once been a chemist, not a chemist anymore. And why was that why her business does so well? I don't understand that. Supportive of grieving mothers, spending time with them and taking great pains to help them choose the most appropriate flowers for their funeral service. Weird. together with an envelope containing her order for that week. Yeah, the order for kids, maybe. Picks them up in his heavy cart. Notice he's using a heavy cart to pick up these boxes full of supposedly flowers. Makes more sense that they're actually full of kids. That's why they need a heavy cart for that. Is it possible that Miss Hamer is all about procuring little kids from the brother who probably must work with flowers, and then she's ambivalent about how the kids get used? Some of them go to grieving mothers who want replacement kids on the cheap, and some of them go to work the mine. And probably the 5-year-old auburn hair girl is going to get delivered to a family mother as a replacement for a dying child. What do you think about that theory? So Mrs. Hamer is a florist and a child procurer, but she can procure kids either for grieving mothers who want a replacement child or for child labor. Melissa says, wouldn't there be something about all the adoptions? They're all kept hush hush. They're not official adoptions. It does leave open a question, like if you're willing to adopt, if you want a new kid, do you really have to go through all the trouble to get an illegal kid smuggled in from London? Why not just go to London and pick up a kid from the orphanage? Aren't they free to adopt? Maybe the orphanage kids are in bad condition and this group specializes in stealing the high quality kids. This could just be a red herring, like she's supportive of the grieving mothers because she wants to sell them big flower arrangements. Let me just see this part again. He tracks them down and he sees a strong horse, a tumbrel cart. Can we look up tumbrel cart and see if a tumbrel cart is a cart that has particularly narrow wheels? Can someone do that? Okay, he looks at two of the crates, had distinct address labels. T. Hamer, 96 Worship Street. Well, we don't really know about that address, but does that mean only two of the crates are going there? He sees an ornate black hearse, but stabling for two further horses. Okay, Rob says it's a two-wheeled cart or wagon typically designed to be hauled by a single horse or ox. Their most infamous use was taking prisoners to the guillotine during the French Revolution. Two wheels allowed the cart to be tilted to discharge its load more easily, as opposed to four wheels. Interesting. That does kind of sound like it might be our cart to me. No sign, no mention of the wheel thickness, though. Burying dead bodies would explain the bad smell. Burying dead bodies in the basement. I like the idea that it's child labor to work a mine. They're bringing kids in from London. And maybe she's also making arrangements to get new kids. I'm not sure why that has to be a secret, though. Let's see. You comfort a grieving mother who's had her kid die, and you tell her, hey, I happen to know a child that really needs adoption. My brother's kid needs to be adopted for only 500 pounds. I could bring him for you. She can't be doing a big business in the town, but they could serve the whole area. Remember, it's a larger area that the forest is serving. So maybe she occasionally gets in a kid that she gives out. And otherwise, she's coordinating child labor with her brother in London on a sort of no questions asked thing. All right, well, we're at our hour mark. I think we're just about done for today. It looks like the mine theorists are in good stead. And my theory of these kids, two kids being just the only two kids and being related to the forest seems wrong. But on the other hand, the forest seems definitely involved in this. I think it does seem like we're dealing with a child smuggling operation, probably from London. Do we think the nails are because of these crates being broken down and rebuilt constantly, or also in the mines, I guess? You'd think that Watson, having served in the war, if this is gunpowder that he smells at the lumber yard coming from a mine, that he would know. He would have recognized it. Hmm. She is also obviously really is getting flowers from London. That's how she has such nice flowers. So he is also sending her flowers. And then some line I don't understand about that's why our business is so popular. All right. Well, there you have it. I don't know if it's worth it, Marco says. Can we check the last letter where the wife somehow dismissed what happened with the forest? You would also recognize the smell of a dead body, just to add, says D. Might not be a mine, some other sort of labor where they need to use small kids, I guess, although that muffled sound really, to me, sounded like a mine. Rob wants to look at the last letter where the wife dismissed what happened to the forest. Not sure I understand that question, but here is the ending part. Woman has not a single nurturing instinct or caring bone in her body. I've never seen her do anything but chide any children who dared to venture into her shop. That makes it more compatible that she's dealing in children, importing them in and sending them out. Okay. Let's stop here. If there are more questions, you can come in the Discord, ask them, talk about this case before next week when we read the next letter. A reminder that there are 4 letters per case now in these old Dear Holmes cases, so the 4th letter will be our last one with clues. And then a week after that, we'll get the actual solution by Holmes. Muffled sound, very black, dirty face of Edward when he was found, all fits in with mining operation. Marco wants to see the wife's last comment. I'm not sure I can find this, that I understand what you're asking. No, I don't know. We'll have to talk about it offline, and we can follow up on it next week if you've still got questions you want to look at. All right, thanks for joining me. I will be back streaming tonight at 10 p.m. Central Standard Time when we play the final episode of Be the Detective, Welcome to Adventure Park. You have 8 hours to watch those previous 2 live streams if you want to catch up and join us tonight. Last night's 5-hour stream, you could probably just jump from hour 1 to hour 5 and just skip over all the struggle till the end. You won't really miss anything. I'll see you then. For the rest of you, I'll see you next week.